a huge part of being a truly customer-centric organization is in never resting on your laurels and saying, oh, we've done a great job, we're going to just keep on keeping on. It's knowing that you've got to constantly innovate, and the businesses that are going to be the ones that are the most successful are the ones who aren't afraid to say, okay, we've always done it this way, but now we're going to try something else because of the feedback that we're hearing from our customers.
Welcome to the Simple Brand Podcast, the show dedicated to helping you create simple experiences for your customers and for your team members. Each week, we're bringing you amazing interviews with business leaders and authors who will teach you how to differentiate your business with the one thing your customers need the most: simplicity. Your customers live in a complex world. Let's make it simple. Now, here's your host, Matt Lyles.
I don't know if you know this about me, but there's a number of things that I'm pretty much an outspoken fan of. A super fan, even. And if you want to get to know me, I think I need to share those with you. I'm a fan of Nashville hot chicken. But not just hot chicken in general. I'm a fan of Hattie B's hot chicken. Look, I get it. They're not the OG hot chicken, but they're my number one favorite. And it's a consistent experience and a consistently crispy, spicy, finger-licking good taste every single time. I'm a fan of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, I've loved Marvel comics since I was a kid. And I've loved seeing my favorite heroes and my favorite storylines come to life on the big screen. And my smaller at-home screen on a frequent basis now. And I'm a fan of the two greatest bands in rock and roll history, REM and Kiss. What? Sure, they are almost polar opposites, but both of them have been a constant soundtrack to pretty much most of my life, and I never get tired of either one of them. Now, you may not be a fan of the same things that I'm a fan of, and that's okay. But I'm willing to bet that you are a fan of some things. Most everybody is a fan of something. And I think a fan base is absolutely key to momentum and growth. Fans are loyal. Well, but not just loyal. Fans are devoted. They'll consume whatever it is their favorite artist or their favorite teams or whoever they're a fan of puts out. Fans are advocates, usually visually showing their support with branded clothes and branded merchandise. And you can ask my wife, Rachel, every time we do any spring cleaning, I have to put my foot down. No, we cannot throw out any of my old REM or Kiss t-shirts. I know they have holes in them. That doesn't make them any less special. And here's a big one. Fans are evangelists. They'll tell all of their friends about their favorite things and then try to show them why their friends need to be fans too. But what if your customers could be fans of you and your brand? Not just loyal customers, but actual super fans. It's totally possible. It can happen, but it takes a lot of work on your part. It takes you delivering the right experiences to them that helps them turn into super fans. And that's why I had such a fun time talking with this week's guest, Brittany Hodak. Brittany's an international keynote speaker and award-winning customer experience leader. She's been a regular contributor for Forbes, Adweek, and Success Magazine. And she's been featured on ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, CNBC, Bloomberg, Fox News, and so many more. And Brittany's been named in Advertising Age's 40 Under 40 list and Inc. Magazine's 30 Under 30 list. And she was awarded Most Disruptive Marketing Entrepreneur at the UN's Impact Awards. And Entrepreneur Magazine calls Brittany an expert at creating loyal fans for your brand, and she's widely regarded as the go-to source on creating and retaining superfans. Listen, Of course, your goal for your brand should be to deliver an experience that creates loyal customers who come back again and again and again. That's a given. But then your goal should be to take that even further. You want to deliver experiences that convert your customers into devoted super fans, repeat clients who will always advocate for your brand without you even having to ask. And in this week's episode, Brittany gives us the lessons on how to do just that. So here it is. Here's my interview with Brittany Hodak. Hi, Brittany. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is fun. Even though, we're meeting virtually, but we're 10 miles away from each other?
I know. Well, now that we know we're neighbors, we get to be friends, which is exciting. So I'm looking forward to meeting not virtually in the very near future.
There you go. Hooray. Hooray for making friends, and hooray for making like-minded friends. I think you and I are on the same page around what we like and what we speak around customer experience.
Yes. Anytime I have somebody who geeks out over customer experience as much as I do, I am excited.
Yes, that is me. Well, so I have followed quite a bit of your work around customer experience and creating superfans, but I'd like to hear from you. Talk to me about your journey, about what you learned, what it takes to create superfans.
Yeah, well, thank you. I feel like I kind of got into the customer experience realm completely by accident. I always thought I was going to work in entertainment. I got my first job at a radio station when I was 16 years old. I was a radio station mascot, which I think is like the most entry-level entertainment job you can get. And I loved being a mascot and getting to see the excitement people had at all of the different events that I would go out and do in the community. But then I had the very good fortune that because my maiden name was Brittany Jones, and because the book series Bridget Jones' Diary was being made into movies when I was in high school, the promotions manager of the radio station said, I keep seeing ads on TV for this Bridget Jones' Diary. We've got a Brittany Jones. What could we do and call it your diary? And I said, well, you're always talking about trying to get more people to the radio station website. Maybe I could just interview the big bands when they come through town. And he said, oh yeah, like that other movie, that Almost Famous movie I keep seeing ads for. Let's do that. That sounds great. Just make a list of all the bands you want to meet and we'll call the labels and hook it up. And I was 17. So I was like, wait, what?
16, 17 years old, and you're saying, hey, so you can pay me to go and meet some of my favorite bands.
Oh yeah. It literally became my job to hang out with rock stars and brag about it on the internet. Like that is what I was paid to do as a teenager, which obviously ruined any chances of me ever having like a quote unquote real job. I was like, wow, I would have paid money to do that. And I was getting paid to do it. And the station was covering my travel. So I'll never forget, I grew up in Oklahoma. And so there weren't any major markets right nearby, but it wasn't too far to go to like Dallas or Little Rock or Oklahoma City. And so sometimes I would have my older brother drive me to the shows if they were like a few hours away. And I'll never forget one of the first ones. I think it was like Blink 182 in Dallas. And I was handing in my time sheet for the week. And the station director said, well, don't forget about mileage. And I was like, what's mileage? I was like, wait.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
You're going to pay for the gas. You paid for my tickets. You paid me to go. It's like, what is this? What is my life?
Wow. And then all downhill from there.
Yeah, all downhill from there. So anyway, you asked about customer experience. So I became very, very fascinated with why some artists become superstars and others don't. Why, some of the bands that I would see playing these big festivals would go away, like why their careers would kind of fizzle, or why some artists got off to a huge start and then, became one-hit wonders. So I became really fascinated with kind of the science of fandom and why people love what they love and trying to find a common denominator with these bands who would either go big or go bust, because it wasn't as easy to draw a direct correlation to say, oh, the ones with the biggest marketing spends are the ones who make it, or the ones who get, the biggest publicity out of the gate, or even the ones who have the best songs. And what I started to realize was almost 100% of the time, the bands that became the biggest were the ones who had the best relationships with their fans, the ones who really cared about a two-way relationship with the people who were out there coming to their shows, buying their albums, supporting them. And as I got a little older, had a few more jobs, continued to work in entertainment. I worked for a few different record labels. I worked for an advertising agency. As I started to work with bigger and bigger brands, I realized that the exact same principles that apply to entertainment hold up in every other vertical. We're living in this experience economy, and it's really about that two-way exchange of, how does this brand or this product or this team make me feel? And how does that directly play into the way that I feel about them? And so I really took this very sort of winding road to the field of customer experience. But once I sort of observed the fact that what I was seeing in entertainment was true in all of these other verticals, I became obsessed with this idea of, well, can I take these entertainment principles and help these other brands that don't exist in the pop culture space to use these same principles to create super fans of their own?
And you're right. It's all about creating that connection and focusing on the emotions and the feelings that somebody has, that a fan has, or that a customer has. So I'm curious, are there any standout lessons that you learned from any particular artist or musician that any brand, any vertical can instill?
Oh my gosh, so many. One that really made a huge impression on me, and this was years before we had the opportunity to work together, but the first time I met Taylor Swift, she was like 16 or 17. I was probably like 22, 23. And we were talking at an after party from an award show. And it was when she got her very first award that night for a music video that she did. And she was at that party with the artist who was in the music video with her. And he was a friend of mine because I'd worked at his record label in college, an artist named Tyler Hilton. And the three of us were talking. And I was fascinated by Taylor's career to that point because she was on an independent record label. She had had good success at country radio. She hadn't yet had a number one song. I think she was like 2 or 3 singles in at that point. And the thing that I was so fascinated by was how she was using MySpace at the time, which was the predominant music social network at the time, to really connect with fans. And she said something to me that I just thought was so profound. And I was like, this girl is going to be one of the biggest superstars on the planet if she understands this as a teenager. And so many artists don't understand it like decades into their career. She said that her goal was to sell 1 million records. So that was a platinum album. And she said, I know that if I want to sell 1 million records, I've got to make 1 million people care about me so that they'll care about my music. And so what she was doing was trying to get 1 million people to understand that she cared about them, right? She was like paying it forward, trying to create that two-way relationship. And I think the lesson there is super fandom is a two-way street. There are so many brands that say, of course we want super fan customers. And yet when you look at their business practices, they're not customer centric at all with their organization. They may claim to be, but in reality, they most certainly are revenue centric or product centric. And if you want to earn super fan customers, you've got to show your customers that you love and appreciate them as well. And I think, hearing Taylor have such a grasp of that concept as a teenager was one of those kind of like aha moments of, okay, this philosophy that I've been sort of developing over these past few years about the relationship between fans and artists has a lot of merit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is amazing to hear that she had that grasp at such a young age. But maybe it's because she felt it. Like she felt it being a listener or fan of other artists and recognizing, oh, you know what? With this artist, I don't feel cared for. With this artist, I do feel cared for. And I think like that speaks to the human nature, that something that everybody wants, our customers, the people that we interact with, everyone wants to feel valued. Everyone wants to feel cared for and understood.
Yeah, 100%. And, there's a really great Oprah quote from the final day of her talk show. And she said she had talked to, I forget the number, I think it was like 30,000 people or something on the show. And every single person wanted the exact same thing. And that was validation. Yeah. And I think sometimes people forget that human experience is what underlies customer experience and employee experience, this human experience that we're all in together. And you can't discount that, because if you do, you're never going to enjoy the kind of success that you could. And sometimes I will say to companies like, if you don't want to be customer centric, that's fine. You don't have to. Someone else will come along and do it for you. Like there will be a competitor who will be happy to treat your customers the way they deserve to be treated in the absence of you making the decision to do so.
There you go. Yeah. And even with those companies that say, oh, we're customer centric, you can kind of apply a filter to their experience and say, well, you say you're customer centric, but here's what your experience says.
Yeah. And that experience gap between the customers and the company is so telling. And one of my favorite ways to tell is companies who have their chief experience officer, whatever, report into the chief revenue officer. And I'm like, okay, so you've got a so-called CCO reporting up to a CRO, which is quite literally saying to everyone internally and externally that customers matter to the extent that they generate revenue. Like you're literally putting customers below revenue on an org chart and saying, hey, look at us. We're so customer centric. We've added this CCO position.
Yeah. But what comes first? Revenue first, not customers first.
Right. Exactly.
So it sounds like you've been able to spend a lot of time understanding, both from artists and other brands, what it takes to create what you call super fans. So before we talk about what it takes to create it, I want to make sure we understand, what does it mean when you say that someone is a super fan?
So a super fan is, if you boil it down to its most basic definition, it's a loyal customer who's creating more customers. So it's someone who, because of the great experience they've had with your brand, becomes an advocate without you even having to ask them to.
Yeah. And sometimes we forget that some of the best marketing can actually come from our customers.
Oh, yeah. Like the best marketing is free, right? Which is great news to anybody with a small budget, because when you tell people you're great, that's marketing. When your customers tell people you're great, that's magic, right? That's when you have this instant credibility built in. And the world we're living in right now is such that every single person is an influencer, right? People talk a lot about influencer marketing or micro influencers, but the reality is that, over the past decade, brands have stripped away a lot of the credibility of the original set of influencers because they've tried to find ways to monetize and exploit that world. And so there's been an erosion of trust among the people who are trying to tell you to use their code to save 20% on whatever weight loss supplement or whatever it is on Instagram or TikTok. But each of us, every single person, is by definition an influencer, because we have people around us who will either take an action or not based solely on a recommendation that we give. So getting your customers to be so delighted by their experience that they want to talk about it, that they want to tell people, whether they've been asked or not. It's so funny because it's like one of the oldest principles of business, right? Like the idea that if you treat your customers well, they'll create more customers for you. Like this is not a new idea. This has been around for millennia, but it also has never been more relevant or more powerful because of how connected each of us is, and because of how easy it is for someone to go to their network of people and say, hey, I need a new vacuum cleaner, or hey, I'm looking for a camp to send my kid to, or I think we're going to move to a new city and I want to find a realtor and a mortgage agent in XYZ city. So the idea that you've got this unpaid army of advocates out there advocating on your behalf is such a powerful way to grow a business. And it makes everything easier because all of a sudden you're going from potential commodity to category of one in the minds of these prospects because someone who they trust has said, this is who you've got to work with.
Yeah, that's right. And when you think about where we are today, 2022, we have more access to information than ever before. We have more access to tools and channels that help us to be able to quickly decide who we want to give our business to, or quickly decide if we want to switch, switch to a new company and support another company. We can do that so much more quickly today than ever before. So that's why it's so important to be able to focus on our existing customers, our existing fans, to build that trust and showcase that trust in other customers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I get it. I understand now who superfans are, why superfans are valuable, but let's talk about how we create superfans. And you've got a 5-step framework that actually walks through that. Can you walk me through that framework?
Yes, Matt, I can. And I'm so glad you asked.
Hooray!
So here's, one of the things that is so important for people to grasp, especially people who run teams or companies. Every single person in your team is in the experience department. Everyone. It doesn't matter if it is the CEO or an intern in their 4th day. The minute that someone either puts on your uniform or name tag or gets behind that keyboard and that email address, they are representing your company. Every single person is representing the company and has the power to make or break reputation for a subset of prospects and customers. So everyone has got to be aligned around this idea that experience matters. And as somebody who has run teams and grown teams and built companies, I know that if something is not easy to remember, it will never be implemented, right?
That's right.
Step number 1 is getting people to remember it. So I tried to come up with a framework that would be very simple for people, not just to remember, but to implement and measure the success of. So I always say, if you want to create superfans, being great isn't good enough. You've got to be super. Easy enough to remember, right?
There you go.
You want to create super fans, you've got to be super. As you mentioned, it's a 5-part framework, SUPER. So S is start with your story. And when I say start with your story, I don't mean lead with your story. Like you shouldn't be out
Right.
there like word vomiting your story to anyone who will listen. What I mean is that you've got to really align your actions to your why. What is it that makes you the best in the world at what you do? What is it that you can show up with to serve customers in a way that none of your competitors can? So really getting clarity on why, and again, whether you're like the CEO of the organization or somebody who's just joined the customer support team or the sales team or the product team, how are you using your unique gifts to benefit the customers? So that's the first part, is start with your story.
Okay. And it's not so much storytelling in the way that too many brands think of storytelling in saying, here's our history. We were founded in this year and here's how we've grown. It's more around, here's what we say sets us apart.
Yeah. And it's really, here's what we do sets us apart. So many brands think that your brand is what you say it is. Your brand is your product packaging and your website and what you're putting on social media and the ads that you're running on TV. But in reality, your brand is what exists in the minds of your customers. And that's being formed every day in every interaction, so much more so by a phone call that somebody has when they call for support, or an experience somebody has when they walk into your restaurant or they walk into your retail store, or they send an email to ask for help. That's your brand. That's the story that customers are telling to each other. And the only way that you can win in the environment that we live in today is to have every single person on your team aligned around the idea that they together are the ones co-creating your brand. The narrative of your brand is being written in real time every day by everyone on your team. So when I say start with your story, whether you're, a team of one or a Fortune 50, getting clarity on how you will distinguish yourself from your competitors has to be the first step. Because if you're not clear on that, what's going to happen is you don't have defendable position. If you're trying to be the best at everything, or you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're going to end up, targeting everyone and attracting no one, because you are not clear on your own superpower, both as an individual and as a company.
Yeah, absolutely right. Did you know that in addition to my podcast and my articles, I speak to audiences all over to help them simplify their customer experience and simplify their employee experience? I've spent the last few years leading a crusade of simplicity across the globe. If you want a winning brand, you have to provide a simple experience to your customers and to your team members. Whether it's a live event or a virtual event, I'd love to partner with you and teach your audience how to do just that. With over a decade in marketing, I know how to hook and captivate an audience. And as a speaker, I know how to connect with that audience. Along with my lessons, I use stories and humor to keep everyone engaged and inspired. Then they leave with the knowledge and next steps to transform their business. As an event planner, you're managing lots of details to give your audience the most memorable event. The last thing you need is a speaker who will make your event memorable for all the wrong reasons. Not only will I leave your audience energized and inspired, I'll make it easy for your team to work with me. Hey, if I've built my brand around simplicity, then you know I'm going to make it simple for you. When you visit mattlyles.com/speaking, you'll find everything you need to know, including details on my topics, promotional materials, and most importantly, a link to connect with my team so we can book your event. So visit mattlyles.com/speaking. I can't wait to help your audience brand out from the crowd. And going back to what you were saying earlier, I learned this lesson, oh my gosh, I guess a little over 10 years ago from Marty Neumeier. I think that's how you pronounce his name. That's how I pronounce his name. Marty Neumeier. Your brand isn't what you say it is. It's what they say it is. They being your customers. But then you have that ability to kind of help co-create, help shape that narrative through all of your actions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so that's the first part of the framework is start with your story. And I've got a ton of resources on my website. It's brittanyhodak.com for brands to really get clarity on what their superpower is, what it is that they feel that they can compete and win on to say, we are best in the world at this. And if you're a customer who cares about XYZ, you should be working with us. So that's part number one. Part number two, the second letter in super, U, stands for understand your customer story. And that's all about getting clarity on what it is that your customers want and need. And there's the great Teddy Roosevelt quote that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And again, it's an old idea that's never been more relevant or timely, because so many people out there are trying to use authority as their number one method of attracting prospects or customers. And they forget about the empathy side. And empathy and authority together are like an amazing 1-2 punch, but you've got to have them both, because, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's it. Yeah. And it's not simply just saying you care about them. They have to feel it, it's having that experience that says, oh, they get me.
Yep, absolutely. Which is a really great transition to the third step of the Superfan system, which is P, and that stands for personalize. And to the extent that you can show someone how much you care and prove to them that they're not just another number or order or commission check, but they are someone whose future and situation you care about, the extent that you can show them that by personalizing is how you're really going to continue that path from potential commodity provider to category of one. And, I always say superfans are created at the intersection of your story and every customer story. And if you think about you and them as like two circles, that intersection, like a Venn diagram, the more those two overlap, the more likely you're going to be able to create that long-time loyal customer.
I like that visual of having a Venn diagram and how you overlap. When you talk about personalizing Connect, too many brands, I think, check off that personalization field by saying, oh yeah, we personalize the experience to our customers. We have a field that has their name in it. Like we send an email that says, hi, Brittany, instead of just hi. So I think personalization is really more than just that. So what does it take to really personalize that experience?
That's a great question. And so many people are like, oh yeah, let me like check the box that I used, a custom first name. That is the floor, not the ceiling. It's almost like the subfloor, the sub basement now, because people expect that, right? Like we're no longer living in a world where dear customer is an appropriate greeting for anyone. Personalization is using the insights that you have about someone to showcase that you have the ability to make a difference in their life. I got a postcard in the mail the other day from Vanderbilt Allergy Clinic, and it said, did you know that more than 90% of people who think they're allergic to penicillin or were told that they are as a child actually are not? And then on the back, it said, come to Vanderbilt Allergy Clinic and we can test to see if you're allergic to penicillin or not. And the reason that was such a relevant communication to me is because I've been told my entire life that I have a penicillin allergy. And on the back, it continued to say, like, many children when they're very young have a reaction to penicillin that's not a true allergy. And especially if you were a kid like in the 70s or 80s, you probably think you have a penicillin allergy, but there's a very strong probability that you do not. And the reason this is important is because penicillins account for such a large percentage of the drugs that, it greatly improves your ability of being able to treat common ailments effectively if you're not knocking out this entire category of drugs. So, that was a brilliant use of personalization. Like if I had just gotten a postcard that said, hey, we do allergy testing, I would have thrown it away. But to say, there's a very strong likelihood that this thing that you've been told for many decades that, it's something that you repeat every time you go to the doctor may not be true. So come in and let's do a test and figure out. And so regardless of the industry you're in, regardless of if you're B2B or B2C or B2B2C or any other combination, using personalization is about taking the smart insights that you have about your customers to prove to them in a quick, succinct, memorable way that you can make their lives better somehow.
Yeah, that's it. So personalized connect, there's 2 more steps in your framework. What's the next one?
So the next one is E, exceed expectations. And this is probably my favorite as somebody who speaks and writes all the time on customer experience. I'm a huge believer in the fact that, not only is experience everything, but everything is experience, every single interaction, every part of that customer's journey. A fun example of the wrong way to do things. The vet that I went to for several years for my 2 dogs changed their voicemail, and it was somebody with a really nice like Australian accent recording this voicemail saying, hey, thank you for calling us. For hours and directions, press 1. For prescription refills, press 2. For cremation and euthanasia, press 3. To schedule an appointment, press 4. And the first time I heard it, I hung up and I called right back because you couldn't schedule appointments online. Like you had to like call and listen to this message. And I was like, did I just hear that right? Oh my gosh. Yes. They are prompting people to press for cremation and euthanasia before even making an appointment, which just it's like so many questions, right? Immediately I had so many questions in my mind about like, how many pets are they having euthanized? And like, who approved this decision? Like, did anyone look at this? And, I switched vets.
Oh, wow.
I immediately found a new vet because I was like, I don't want to have to think about the fact that at some point my pets aren't going to be here anymore every time I make an appointment for them.
Yeah.
Like that's a terrible customer experience. That's a horrible mindset to be in. But the E in Super is for exceed expectations. And it's all about how you can not just give your customers what they're expecting, but give them a little extra, do a little more, help them feel that they are being taken care of in a way that they're not going to find elsewhere. Because here's the reality, and I feel like I can say this like as a customer myself, in a lot of ways, like customers are kind of lazy, right? Like you want to find a solution and then stick with it. Nobody's like, what would be great is to go back and see how many service providers or product providers in my life I can replace with somebody else. You want to like find someone who does a great job and exceeds your expectation, and then like not think about that anymore, right? Just press the auto shipment button. So exceeding expectations is the way that you can get people to sort of forget that there are competitors that exist in your marketplace because they're like, oh, I've got a guy. This is great. Like I have a person. I've got this company. I've got this taken care of. Check, next.
Yeah. And with everything that we have going on, we're bombarded with so much throughout the day, whether it's other companies' advertisements or information or everything else we have going on in our life. No one wants to have to spend the time to keep looking for a new service provider. I mean, to your point, you just want to set it and forget it.
Yeah. And that's why, again, this idea of customer advocates is so valuable, because what we're seeing more and more is people just turning to their social networks to ask for a recommendation, sometimes even before they Google it, right? Because it's just so easy to go on a social network and say, hey, I need somebody to fix my gutters. Who should I call? And immediately you will have someone in your network who says, use this company or don't use this company, right? Like how many times have you seen people asking for a recommendation on socials and people are saying, whatever you do, don't work with this contractor or don't buy a product from this company. Every single customer is an influencer. And to the extent that you can exceed their expectations and deliver a memorable experience, they will very likely tell someone about it, because we all want to be seen as helpful, right? Like people all want to help the people around them. So whether you know the person, whether it's like your best friend or whether it's somebody who just lives in your neighborhood and is posting in your Nextdoor app, right? People like to help people.
Yeah. It simplifies that whole research process of trying to figure out, okay, I need to figure out exactly who I want to use. Instead of doing a Google search and reading all these articles and reading all these ratings, if you just simply ask your friends or ask your network, you're going to get answers really quickly. And a lot of times we tend to trust those answers, and that shortens our research process. And just before you and I got on the interview, we were actually talking about some different software that I've been looking at in my business. And what was, I think, maybe a 90-second conversation helped save me a lot of time in research going forward.
Yeah. And, without revealing too much, I think it probably cemented your decision not to purchase a product that had been in your consideration set. And that's how these things go. And, I've seen estimates of anywhere from like 70% to 90% when it comes to how much of a customer journey actually happens before anybody interacts with your brand at all. But regardless of which study you believe, it's a lot, right? Like customers can do research so quickly and so easily with devices that they're carrying around in their pockets that a lot of times, by the time somebody is coming to your website or sending you a text message or calling you, it's really just to decide if they're going to give you money or not. They're either looking for you to make it as easy as possible to take their money, or they're looking for any excuse for them to say, okay, yeah, this is not the company I want to go with. So again, I think a lot of people, especially who've been in sales for like decades and decades, are like, oh, I'm talking to you for the first time. Let me educate you about anything and everything. And customers are like, no, I already know a lot.
Right.
The fact that I'm here talking to you is not me coming in completely ignorant to the subject. It's me saying I'm at the point in my journey where I need to talk to a human. So take me from step 6 to step 8 rather than step 0 to step 2.
Right. And that helps improve that experience in the sales process too.
Yep, absolutely. And, I would say this the same way everyone on your team is in the experience department, everyone in your team is in the sales department. Because if somebody on your customer service team or somebody on your product team or somebody in your accounting department who's working on paying the bills doesn't deliver a great customer experience, how likely is that person to come back in the future? Much less likely, right? So just because you're not in charge of the first sale doesn't mean you don't have an outsized influence on the next sale and whether or not that's going to happen.
There you go. All right, we've gone through the first 4 steps of the framework. Start with your story, understand your customer's story, personalize and connect, exceed expectations, bring it on home. What's the last step?
Well, so I've got good news for anybody who's like 5 things to remember. That's a lot because it's really kind of 4 because the R stands for repeat. So each of those 4 things, it's not a set it and forget it. You've got to do it over and over again. There's a really great quote from Elizabeth Arden, and that's repetition makes reputation and reputation makes customers. It's not enough to show up and be great once and then let your guard down. There's so many companies, especially in creative spaces, where it's like you've got all of this manpower and all of these resources dedicated to acquiring your customers, and then you hand them off and they don't have that same level of service, right? So you've got to continue to earn your right to serve these customers. So R stands for repeat. You've got to personalize and exceed their expectations again and again and again, not just in your initial relationship.
Right. It's not just a one-time effort. And then I think when you focus on that repetition, on repeating, I think that helps you better learn where you can continue to improve the experience each time.
Oh, it absolutely does. And, anybody who's interested in learning more about the Superfans system process can pick up my book, Creating Superfans, in stores, January 2023. A huge part of Repeat is about the systems and processes that you can put in place to not just enable everybody on your team to be able to create these amazing experiences again and again, but to track the impact that they're having, to look for ways to continually improve. Because monitoring the voice of your customer is a huge part of being a customer-centric organization, and then implementing changes based on the feedback that you're giving. So a huge part of being a truly customer-centric organization is in never resting on your laurels and saying, oh, we've done a great job, we're going to just keep on keeping on. It's knowing that you've got to constantly innovate, and the businesses that are going to be the ones that are the most successful are the ones who aren't afraid to say, okay, we've always done it this way, but now we're going to try something else because of the feedback that we're hearing from our customers.
Right. And then even if it's not based on feedback, it can also be based on the fact that expectations change over time. If you're looking to exceed expectations, you may exceed a customer's expectation in 2022, but if you do the exact same thing in 2024, you're probably not going to even meet their expectations.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And also, one of the things that companies sometimes don't understand about customer experience is your customers aren't just comparing you to the best experience they've had with your direct competitors. They're comparing you to the best experience they've ever had anywhere. And right. I think over the past 2 years, we've seen this more than ever in customers' expectations with omni-channel experiences with brands. And as shopping habits and behavior habits have changed post-COVID, it's like, it's no longer acceptable to say like, oh, I can't tell you where your package is at, or I can't tell you where in this process you're at, because a customer is going to say, I've been able to track my pizza from the time it got put in the oven for a decade, but you're right. telling me you don't know where this like $3,500 telescope I just ordered from you is? Like, that's not acceptable, because people aren't just judging you against the people in your industry. They're looking at the best experiences they've had and saying, I deserve to be treated like a VIP because I am paying you for this exchange.
Yeah, you're right. They're not saying against your own direct competitors. They're saying, if this company can do this, if Domino's can do this, then I expect you to do it as well.
Absolutely. And, it's true for small business owners as well. Regardless of the size of your company or the size of your team, people expect you to give them that service that they are used to getting elsewhere.
Love it. Well, Brittany, I have learned so much about creating superfans from you. I appreciate this. And I'm looking forward to your book coming out. But I've got one last question for you. If you were to create a 5-song soundtrack for superfans or creating superfans, what songs would you include?
I love this question. So fun. Okay, so here are some of the ones that I came up with. Obviously, Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me. That has to be on the list, right?
Yes.
Very CXy. Another one this was a Brittany Jones Diary band, Blink-182, All the Small Things.
Yes.
Because that's what CX is, right? It's all of the things. Personalize. I really think we're going to have to take a little bit of creative liberty with the content of the song, but from a title standpoint, it works really great. Alanis Morissette, You Ought to Know.
Oh, yeah.
Because your customers want you to know what they want before you tell them. Knowing that one negative experience does not necessarily mean the end of your relationship with that customer. If you can recover in an appropriate way, you may actually have a better and longer relationship with that customer than if something had never gone wrong. So in an ode to the service recovery paradox, I am choosing Back to Good by Matchbox 20.
Nice.
That was a long one, right? But I got there.
There you go.
And then I picked like 30 more. So I'm going to just randomly choose one that sounds fun to me right now. And that's my buddy MC Hammer, or as he likes to go by, Hammer, with Can't Touch This.
Nice. There you go. Wow. And this is my soundtrack from growing up, essentially. A lot of this was from preteen and teen period. So I love these songs.
Well, you're welcome, Matt.
Hooray. Well, Brittany, I've learned so much from you today, but I know there's a whole lot more we can learn. Where can people go to learn more from you?
Well, people can find me at BrittanyHodak.com. And if you want to go to BrittanyHodak.com/live, I've got some special freebies that you can pick up as a thank you for listening to this episode. So BrittanyHodak.com/live, you'll be able to get a free video course at that link. And then, of course, all the information about all the other places that you can find and follow me.
Hooray, cool. I have gone through one of your video courses at least, and then seen some of your ABCs of CX videos. So those are a lot of fun, and they're great, quick, simple lessons to help you understand how you can create superfans. Excellent. Thank you, Brittany. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Matt. I am so glad that we are neighbors and now friends.
I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Brittany Hodak. So go and learn more from her at BrittanyHodak.com/live. You'll find lots of lessons to help you learn how to turn your customers into superfans. But not only that, when you visit BrittanyHodak.com/live, you'll also get access to Brittany's Superfan Wave video course. It's a free 5-part course where Brittany shares her wave methodology step by step, along with some prompts to help you create a culture of super fandom for your brand. And if you're a super fan of the Simple Brand podcast, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. It's going to make it a lot simpler for you to get future episodes like the next one featuring Pam Slim. Pamela is an author, business coach, and the co-founder of the Main Street Learning Lab in Mesa, Arizona, along with her husband, Daryl. Pamela is the best-selling author of Escape from Cubicle Nation, Body of Work, and her latest, The Widest Net. In The Widest Net, Pam teaches us how to build strong, diverse relationships, identify and connect with new partners, expand markets, generate leads, and find new customers in places we may never have even considered. And she shows us how to connect with potential clients and customers using the true breadth of the marketplace, which she calls an ecosystem of living connections. So go ahead and subscribe. You'll automatically get Pam's episode as soon as it's live. Until then, keep it simple.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Simple Brand Podcast. Want to make your listening experience simple and automatically receive each new episode? Visit our website simplebrandpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. If you're finding value from the Simple Brand Podcast, leave us a rating or review. That helps us get the show to the ears of the people who need it most. Be sure to catch Matt right here next week. Same Matt time, same Matt channel. Until then, keep it simple.